Hey guys, welcome to Grad Coach TV, where we demystify and simplify the oftentimes confusing world of academic research. My name's David, and today I'm chatting to one of our trusted dissertation coaches, Kerryn, about 7 apps that can really help out in your dissertation or thesis writing process. This discussion is based on one of our many articles over at the Grad Coach blog. So, if you'd like to find out more about these great apps, check out our blog at gradcoach.com/blog. Also, if you're looking for a helping hand with your dissertation, thesis, or research project, be sure to check out our one-on-one private coaching service, where we hold your hand throughout the research process, step by step. For more information and to book a free consultation with one of our coaches, check out gradcoach.com. Hey Kerryn, welcome to the Coachcast. It's great to have you.
It's great to be back, David.
So today we're talking about apps to help you in your dissertation and thesis writing process. The first one that I'd like to plug is Grammarly. Kerryn, what's the deal with Grammarly and why is it so useful?
Yes, I find Grammarly incredibly useful. I still use it. I even have the premium version because Grammarly just has a huge amount of functionality for spell checking, grammar checking, making sure your punctuation is appropriate, making sure your tone is appropriate. If you're needing something to be written more formally, it gives you suggestions as to how to make it a little bit more formal, but still appropriate. And all of those things together just make it just a really, really useful app to have. And you can even have a little add-on your browser so that you can check your emails or your Facebook statuses if you so indulge. So that is just really helpful. I think I use the premium version because it also has the very useful option of checking things like plagiarism. And I know even when we have our best intentions, we might feel like there are only certain numbers of ways that you can say certain things, especially in your methodology chapter, for instance, and just making sure that you have written the appropriate thing, but that it doesn't look like plagiarism can be very helpful, because a lot of schools are very strict with plagiarism, as they should be, and just making sure that that is written appropriately and unplagiarized can be very helpful. What I really like about Grammarly is that it is very effective, as I mentioned earlier, a lot more effective than maybe the spell checker in your Word document, for instance, and just having that little add-on to give you that extra little edge around your tone, around your overused words. My overused word is always however, and so it just sort of flags those things that you do, that we all do when we write, and just makes sure that you are aware of them and provides you with options as to how you can make some changes, which is very helpful. Also really useful if you're worried about the academic language that you are trying to, sort of embrace, and worried about how you're sounding, or if you're a second language student, sort of giving you that constant feedback as to, how you can make those changes can be very helpful for improving your overall writing skills in general. So it's very, very useful for a number of reasons.
I think those are great points. One that I'd like to add as well is it really just ups the polish of your document. So when you're sending a draft through to a supervisor for feedback, not having grammatical or spelling errors just really means that they can focus on the important aspects, the content. And it's really just going to put your reader on the right side when looking at your work. There are some alternatives to Grammarly. You can look at Pro Writing Aid or Hemingway. They just don't all seem to have as much functionality as Grammarly. It's important to question as well, if we're using something like Grammarly, why would I use editing services or get my work edited prior to submission? And the real answer is, unfortunately, as good as the software is, it's not able to catch everything. And the human is always going to be better at identifying specific issues, and I want to say special cases where something has been said incorrectly for the field rather than in general. So definitely use Grammarly so you can learn while you're writing, but don't not get your work edited right at the end, just in case, because that's going to be super important for ensuring you've got that professional, clean dissertation or thesis. So the second app that we really recommend is Evernote. Kerryn, what's the deal with Evernote? Why does everyone like it so much?
Yes, David, Evernote is a really useful app just because it sort of stores multiple different kinds of information, whether it's text-based, video, whether it's images, all in one place that can be sort of synchronized over the web, on your phone, on multiple devices. And as a result, it ends up becoming incredibly useful. I know when I was a PhD and a master's student, thoughts just sort of pop into your head, or you have discussions in conferences and it sort of just reminds you about something, or you needing to keep some information somewhere, and just having it all in sort of one place can be super useful, especially in the beginning of a dissertation where you're trying to find your feet, trying to get all of your thoughts together. And as a result, I think Evernote can be a very powerful tool for doing that and for helping you in this way. Because it's synced across multiple devices, you lose your phone, doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but it doesn't matter for that reason. At least you didn't lose the important information. And as a result, I think Evernote is just great.
I totally agree, and I still use Evernote today. Another nice factor about it is you can actually split into different sets of notes. So I have personal notes, and I have research notes, and then I have just organization notes. And so that's really helpful for me in terms of keeping things separate, but having it all in one place. In terms of alternatives that you can use instead of Evernote, there's things like Microsoft OneNote, Apple Note, Dropbox Paper. These are all quite useful, but they just seem to lack a bit of that all-encompassing capacity that Evernote currently has. Evernote also has a free version that is surprisingly in-depth. So it's a great one to try out. And if you're really keen on it, you can always upgrade to premium as well. So the third app we're going to talk about today is Otter. Kerryn, what is Otter and what are the benefits of using it in a dissertational thesis?
Yes, Otter. Otter is a dictation app, and what it essentially does is allows you to convert audio and spoken words into written text, and that can be super useful for a number of reasons. Two that come to mind is when you are on a bus and you've got a thought and you can't really write. Sometimes you just have a little bit of an audio note to yourself, and that can be very helpful to get that from in your head to onto paper. Sometimes people, especially when you're writing, maybe your first draft and you just can't seem to get your head around a particular issue, you can sort of just speak it to your phone or to some kind of recorder, and you can get it from spoken to text in a relatively straightforward way. Also, where it becomes interesting are for those of you who are doing qualitative research, you're in your interviews and you're trying to get your interviews from audio to text. And that can be a very helpful first step. And I'm saying first step because, of course, Otter won't necessarily look at too much of the nuances when it comes to human language and how people speak. So it is a very useful thing to just sort of get as much of the bulk of what somebody said down, but you definitely do want yourself or somebody to go through and maybe clean up and make sure that you're getting that text base in a way that is very usefully transcribed for your research. So that, I think, brings me to this idea that if you can get it done in a way that at least speeds up the process, then a tool like Otter can be very useful, but you definitely do want somebody to maybe sort of check that, either you or a professional.
I think that's a great point, especially because we know that software is fallible and there's just a bit of benefit, as we said, with the editing as well. So humans can just identify these specific special points. What I'd also say there is Otter can be really useful when, as Kerryn mentioned, you're thinking through ideas, but you can even use it as a discussion point or even just to frame your thinking, play it back to yourself to really see how it plays out. Because it's like having a conversation with your supervisor, but it's just with yourself. It's a little awkward, but it can be helpful to just make sure that your arguments are flowing nicely. And if you're like me and someone who prefers talking to writing, it's definitely helpful. So our fourth app is a cloud storage app, and I can't stress how important these are. The one we'll be talking about today is Dropbox. Kerryn, why is Dropbox so important for any student or basically any person at the moment?
Yes, any person. I'm not a student, definitely use Dropbox. Dropbox is very useful because, as you said, it's a very powerful cloud storage space. And initially for free, you get a couple of gigs, but once you start paying, you get massive amounts of space that is dedicated to you and your files, be they written, be it Microsoft products, be it anything, be it videos, and that can be very helpful to just have that cloud storage space. The reason that having cloud storage is very important, regardless of what you're using, is probably coming from somebody who back in the day would run around with a flash drive.
Oh, yes.
With all of my important assignments, all of my chapters, and you leave it somewhere, you leave it in the computer lab, and it's just very treacherous. But having a sort of a cloud storage space means that you can work on multiple devices. You don't have to worry about the sizes of those devices. So if you're working with sort of very big files such as videos or those kinds of contents, then just having that space that can be synced across multiple devices can be super useful. And the reason it's very useful is because of safety. Whether something is lost, whether it is stolen, whether it's damaged, it does matter once again, but it doesn't matter because for at least for the reasons that you've lost all that information. There is nothing more heartbreaking than to have spent 3 days toggling at a chapter and massaging it and making it perfect for you, and then something happens and you've lost it. So so sort of just keeping that stuff safe for you and for your mental health, that is really helpful.
I totally agree there, Kerryn. Losing data is just not worth it. And these services, there are a lot of free options like Google Drive, Microsoft OneNote, iCloud, that you are generally going to be sort of opting into from a personal perspective. So using it for your research is great. I know I used a ton of Dropbox because I had video files, almost 2 terabytes of it. And so I did not want that to be just on one device. If I lost that, it was most of my PhD up in flames. So I used Dropbox and checked it regularly just to make sure everything was where it needed to be. Other alternatives that you can think of are things like GitHub if you're in the programming sphere, because that's great for version control. Version control is useful when you're working on a document and making changes. You can go back to previous iterations and see what changes have been made. And this becomes specifically important when you're working sort of multiple authors on a paper or your supervisor giving feedback and making minor changes. It's helpful to know what they've changed and how. The fifth app that I would suggest using is Canva. Kerryn, I'm sure you use Canva. I know I use it. What is the benefit of Canva?
Yes, I definitely use Canva. And I think the really wonderful thing about Canva is that it's super easy to use. It's a beginner-friendly graphic design app that allows you to do a bunch of things. And we'll go into that in a moment. But I think what I really want to sort of stress is that it is totally web-based, which means that you don't have to worry about storage on your computer. You can just log into your account and go at it. You would probably be doing things like creating graphs or presentations or posters or a number of different things. You could even use Canva to create some simple graphics around perhaps your framework, your conceptual framework. And all of those things can be done simply and beautifully in Canva in a way that would be a little bit tedious in some other apps that I know that I used to use when I was a master's student. So I really appreciate Canva. I just spent some time creating what I like to think is quite a beautiful presentation for a conference that I'm going to at the end of the month. So I think it is just so easy, so useful. Couldn't recommend it enough.
I agree completely. Canva is life-changing. It sort of gets you away from the standard smart art look of something like a PowerPoint. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just provides a little bit more polish or a professional look. There are also alternatives that you can look at, like GIMP. Another one is Inkscape, that unfortunately you will have to download onto your device, but it gives you even more access to your pictures and devices. So Inkscape is not easy to use, but it does allow you to make really fine scale changes to your pictures. I think one of the benefits of using a system like this to make your graphs and figures is it really just takes it up a level. And we know that this is important because presentation matters. So you might have written the absolute best piece of work, but if your figures and tables look really dodgy, people will not trust your work. So having that high quality professional theoretical framework or conceptual framework just really increases the sort of confidence people will have in your work and research. Our sixth app that we're going to be talking about today is Mendeley. Mendeley is a reference manager. So Kerryn, what's the benefit of a reference manager and why Mendeley?
Yes, David, I cannot stress the importance of a reference manager enough. Yes. One of the most common problems that we see in dissertations are inconsistent referencing, poor referencing to the style that you need it, and a lot of other issues. And while manually inserting your references is fine, absolutely fine if you've got sort of 5 or 6 references for a paper, when you're starting to get over 10, over 20 references, that can start getting really unwieldy. For instance, you delete a sentence in your actual dissertation, but then it doesn't delete the reference in your manager. So you have to go back and you have to check, and your bibliography doesn't match your text. And it's just a nightmare to deal with when you're having a bigger chapter or a bigger dissertation that you're having to sort of bring together. So what a reference manager does is it allows you to take an article and it stores the article's information for you. Sometimes you'll do that manually. Some reference managers allow that process to be done quite easily. What Mendeley does is it allows you to put an add-on onto your browser. So when you're on that article, if you're on Science Direct, for instance, and you're on that article, you can kind of just click on the Mendeley add-on and it'll sort of give you the information that is useful within a reference, things like the author name, the year, that kind of thing. You check it and you just add it through to one of your folders or through to the Mendeley system. And that is so useful because then you have all of the important references, all of the important articles in one space. And then what you can then do is you can have add Mendeley onto something like your Microsoft Word document where you're writing your chapter, for instance. You can do it on multiple different pieces of writing software, but Microsoft Word is quite commonly used. And at that point, what you can then do is you can go click on the Mendeley option and you can sort of insert your references as you go. What it really does is it doesn't just add your reference, it adds a code to that particular reference for that article. So if you have to change your referencing style from, say, Harvard to Chicago or to APA, for whatever reason, maybe you realize that you've been using one and your school suggests that you use another, or your supervisor wants you to use another, then you can just click on it and it will just do it easily and automatically. You don't have to worry about it. And that is extremely powerful because then you have to go back and make all of those changes all over again. I cannot stress the need for a reference manager enough. A lot of schools do allow for paid versions that they have subscriptions to, but Mendeley, for you to start off with, has a huge functionality in its free version. So I really cannot stress the usefulness of Mendeley enough. Also, really useful, we have a video on Grad Coach on how to put it in and how to even get the add-on for Mendeley. So definitely consider looking at those videos if your interest is piqued. But I strongly suggest that if you have more than 15 references, avoid doing it manually at all costs because it's just not worth the stress that you'll have to go through towards the end of your proofread and your dissertation.
I think you are saying all the right words there, Kerryn. It is such an important thing. One thing to keep in mind, though, with any sort of reference manager is you do need to check when you are adding in a reference, that it does it correctly. You can also import papers to Mendeley or your reference manager often enough by simply dragging a PDF into that document. But when it does that, it's unfortunately less likely to get it correct compared to the plugin for online. And so when that happens, just make sure to check out your reference, make sure it's correct. Another way that you can sort of make that easier in Mendeley is to just take the DOI and search by the DOI, because the DOI is the unique identifier for any document online, and that will then ensure that it's correctly loaded into Mendeley. In terms of alternatives that you can use to Mendeley, there's quite a few free options out there. I would recommend Zotero or EndNote. You can use Microsoft Word's reference manager. I just wouldn't suggest. It's not as capable as any of the others. Lastly, I would say as well, as a plugin for Mendeley, Mendeley has some extra functionality. If you're using the desktop version, you can search within your articles, which is really useful if they're loaded into it. And it also has the ability to take notes on paper and highlight. So if you're someone who doesn't like to print out an article, you can sort of keep it all in one place and work from it there. So the seventh app we're looking at is Freemind. It's a mind mapping tool. Kerryn, what's the benefit of using it, and why mind map?
Yes, mind maps are just really useful ways of visually presenting your ideas and how they're connected. And it can be used in essentially a number of ways. So one way that you can use it is you can use it to map out your dissertation, right? The different chapters and the different components of the different chapters and what they entail, maybe even some links or images or what have you that you need to remind yourself as to where you can go to find that information. Maybe, for instance, your introduction links to a grad coach video on how to do an introduction, for instance. So that's one way that you can use it. You can also use it just to do some more project management, sort of map out what you need to do, what is urgent, what is not urgent, by sort of toggling the different nodes of the mind map up and down relative to each other. It's just a great way of just sort of visually presenting information in a way that is easily accessible for those people who do think in images and do like having a little bit more of a display. And so for those reasons, I think it is very, very useful to have some kind of mind mapping tool. And Freemind is excellent because it is free and it's in the name, and it can be used on Windows and Mac and other devices. So that's always very useful.
I think those are really key points there, Kerryn. Another benefit of mind mapping is when you're in your lit review stage, you can actually start connecting literature as well. So in that mind map, you can sort of have the papers, what they worked on, what industries, what specific pros and cons there are, and then you can make linkages between them. And that's really helpful for having a visual representation of how the literature is fitting together. And so I think it's not a common use of it, but one that can be super beneficial. There are some alternatives to Freemind, like MindMap, and there are some paid versions as well, sort of like MindMeister. You can also consider using tools like Trello, project management tools, because that does allow some visualization. But I still think nothing beats a mind map for visualizing that data. So our last point is not really an app, but it's a bonus, is there are so many online platforms out there to learn new skills. Things like Udemy, DataCamp, Coursera. These are really useful platforms for just upskilling yourself. You know, we might have mentioned mind mapping. There's probably a course on how to effectively use mind mapping to write your literature review. And so there's really useful things. I know I've also taken a look at some of the statistical analysis courses as well. It's just a really quick and easy way to get a basic understanding on a concept and to make sure you're on the right track. Kerryn, what are the other benefits that you would say of sort of upskilling via these platforms?
One thing that is incredibly important to emphasize is that it really feels, at least at some point in your dissertation, like you have to become a little bit of an expert at a bunch of things. And that is more the case if you're changing field, right? So you're changing from your knowledge base in one area to your knowledge base in another area. Luckily, MOOCs are available, or these online learning platforms are available to help you sort of catch up where you need to catch up and to upskill in those areas that you need to. This could include creating a better graph and visually displaying it in an effective way. I learned how to code using MOOCs. I learned how to do some machine learning using MOOCs. And if I didn't have those resources, I wouldn't have been able to upskill in as effective way. I remember back in the day when you sort of tried to read a book on how to do something, and it's just a little bit less, you're a little bit less motivated. There's not as much gamification on trying to keep you invested in learning that skill. So learning a bunch of skills, learning how to write academically, learning how to do some kinds of quantitative analysis, learning how to do some qualitative analysis, trying to at least get the basics down so you feel comfortable with the things you need to do in your dissertation can just be incredibly powerful and incredibly important. And luckily, all of these different course options are available. They're available for relatively cheap or free. And as a result, why not? Why not take advantage of it and get a little bit of skills? Not to mention the fact that even if you did decide to maybe use us, for instance, to help you with your quantitative data or something like that, sometimes just upskilling just ensures that when you do enter the job market, you've got a little bit of something extra that maybe you can put onto your CV, especially if you decide to deviate from academia after your dissertation, which can be very, very important and can just make you feel a little bit more motivated.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Kerryn. It's so important to continually work on improving ourselves. Kerryn, it's been absolutely great having you on the Coachcast today. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, David. Thanks for having me.
All right, so that's a wrap on this episode of Grad Coach TV. Remember, if you want to find out more information about these great apps, be sure to check out the blog at gradcoach.com/blog. There you can also get access to our free dissertation and thesis writing mini course, which gives you all the basics you need to get started on your research journey. Also, if you're looking for help with your dissertation or thesis, be sure to check out our one-on-one private coaching service, where you can work with one of our friendly coaches, just like Kerryn. For more information and to book a free consultation, head over to gradcoach.com. So, that's all for today. Until next time, good luck.